section. So, people, there is something I want to speak to us about today, and that is the way we are so superstitious about certain things that happen in our lives. There is this story that broke, I think that was a couple of days back, about a woman that was a widow accused of being a witch. And the community in Abia State did some things that are really morally reprehensible. They did some things that really, will make you feel sad that at certain point you think, we are actually a people, a learned people. We are people that are, ought to be moving forward. But when you hear about such actions, when you witness such actions, you begin to question some of us if we actually, in the words of my good friend Odera Ibo, Apka Nigeria, he will tell you that if these people are reasoning from their orifice. I fell short of actually asking the people of Abia, how come that in the year 2022 we are still reasoning in this fashion and in this manner? Recall that there was a time young children in Akwa had 6 inches nailed down to the point that they touched their brain just because they said they want to, do away with the evil spirit that is worrying them. You ask yourself, how did we get to this point of really widows you do not know, you don't, that you ought to protect, but you do such, this sort of things to them, that these things really are very reprehensible. But I'm also glad that in these, that in all this, that Arise TV was able to actually discuss this. That they, because one of the part of the things we do, while we do whatever we do to broadcast, communicate, is to partly to educate, to enlighten, and to also help to move away from some of these things that are hoping that our engagement in discussing these things will help to frame these narratives better, to frame the ignorance and help to ensure that this type of rascality and ignorance that it is eventually eradicated from our mindset. Now let's listen to this discussion here.
Very well, thank you. Good morning to you viewers. Here are some stories that are trending across the globe. Let's begin with the fact that a follow-up on the widow who was assaulted and filmed being beating up in Abia State. Now she has been rescued by the First Lady of the state. Then, big question, why call him Senator Kashim Chetima when you could call him Mazi Chetima, which in our 1 of Imo State, Ezego of Upper Iweka 1. Of course, also on what's trending, the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, they're worried. 6 out of 10 doctors are leaving the country. Finally, Governor Wike has finally responded and he's saying something is coming.
We want to learn.
So, like I said before, let's quickly do this. I think, hold on.
Follow up on the story that we shared yesterday. Mrs. Amarachi Okechi, the widow who was publicly tied up and flogged in Umwegu in Mpagbende local government area of Abia State. She has been rescued and taken to a hospital for treatment. Now, in this video that was shared online, we see youths flogging Mrs. Okechi after tying her up, following allegations of witchcraft. And it really got the attention of the world. And in fact, the First Lady of the state, Mrs. Nkechi Ikpeazu.
Now, in this day and age, we will tie somebody up on the allegation that he's a witch. Listen, people, we should be roundly ashamed of ourselves. Do you know, especially when it concerns the widows, do you know what actually leads to such nonsense? It's mostly when men begins to when men begin to make some advances to these widows and they reject their advances, suddenly you hear, okay, I'll deal with you. And they begin to concoct and cook such nonsensical narratives and stories that will eventually lead that the younger ones that they think they can manipulate and control would eventually get to the point of doing something like this. You tie your fellow human for no other reason than that, oh, because she's a widow, there is no man to speak for her, and you engage in
Now, the
such
chief
things.
press secretary to the wife of the governor of Abia State, Mr. Chika Ojiegbe, basically announced in a statement that the widow has been rescued and they will keep us updated as more information comes out on this topic. I think this is amazing because we did speak about this yesterday and we spoke truth to power, basically calling for the Abia State government to do something about this. In fact, she has a gender-based violence arm of the community where she looks into situations like this based on circumstances. So I think this is incredibly laudable.
Well, yes, it is. But let's restate the point of the ordeal faced by widows in Nigeria, not just in terms of widowhood rights, also inheritance rights, also the way they are treated by the community. The primitive backward thinking is that if a woman loses her husband and she's a widow, everybody in the neighborhood will be looking at her as a witch. Men don't die, they are killed by their wives in many of our communities, and that's why these women are subjected to all kinds of
Humiliations.
And even when widowhood rights is not the issue, even persons within the community behave towards them in a very negative way. But nobody does that to widowers. You won't hear anybody say, that man is a witch, he's a wizard. His wife died because of his wizardry. So this mindset is something that needs to be addressed in terms of public enlightenment. In the case of Mrs. Amarachi Okichi, we're told that she's been taken to the hospital and that the police are already investigating the matter. And we hope that all those persons who were flogging her, who could be identified through the recording, will be made to face the full wrath of the law. Yes, I pointed out yesterday that witchcraft is a felony under the criminal code and the penal code. But how do you identify a witch? And the law does not give anybody the right to resort to jungle justice. So Mrs. Ikpeazu has done very well. We understand that the chairman of the local government was also involved in the rescue mission, and that they responded promptly, I think is very good. However, while we're talking about this incident in Abia, there is another story in Bojiboki, local government area of Cross River State, where two widows, again widows, they had gone for early morning prayers in the Catholic Church. They were returning from home. Some young boys said, oh, they were coming from witchcraft coven. And they beat them. They were not as lucky as the Abia woman. They killed them. They died. Just on the basis of mere suspicion that a woman coming back from church in the early hours of the morning must be returning from a witchcraft coven. So this is the kind of madness that you'll find in this environment as a result of superstition, prejudices, and the reign of impunity from the high places to the low places in Nigeria.
We've spoken about education so much this morning, and that's why education is so important. Firstly, it is good that this was responded to quickly by the state government, and it's good news to hear that the woman is now receiving care in hospital. But yes, the people involved in this do have to face the full wrath of the law, and we need to start taking these situations that are regular occurrences, like Dr. Abati said, even in Boki local government area in Cross River State, these regular occurrences need to come to an end. We have to be able to enforce laws that are strong enough to ensure that this doesn't go on. For goodness sakes, this is happening right in the middle of a street. And this is being done for everyone to see. And people think that they have the right as well. They have the right to inflict pain and harm onto another human being based off what they think or when that's not necessarily the case. I do hope that she recovers, and I do hope that she gets well soon, and I hope that she is kept safe, because clearly she is far from safe in her community.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a sad occurrence, and it's a reflection of what our society is. We have a society that does not care for the weak. And apart from widowhood, I think it's just a reflection of what happens in widowhood and women, especially because they're weak. Because that woman in that video, the husband that was supposed to protect her just passed. Was nobody to protect her. Also, there's weakness. Because when you look at it, look at the social circumstance. Maybe there's no financial empowerment as regards that. Because have you ever seen a very rich woman being beaten? There's also a case of financial empowerment. And most importantly, there's also a case of a society that doesn't even think of the downtrodden in society, the poor and the weak, and jungle justice. So it's a sum total of what our society has become. And I'm kudos to the governor's wife for stepping in for doing that. But that's who we are. We're a society that denigrates people because they're poor, they're weak, they're helpless. We're a society that collects inheritance on the fortunes of a husband once his wife dies. We're a society that sings in our song that if you are poor, you should go and die. Yeah, there are popular music songs like, if you don't get money, hide your face. So a society that's constantly telling people that if you don't have money, go and hide your face. An indication that if you are not rich in Nigerian society, then there's nothing for you. So we are a society, and this is a reflection of who we are. We can talk about it all we want, but how do we treat the gatekeeper close to us? Do we treat them well? How do we treat the widow on the street that's come to beg for alms? Don't we tell them that, am I the cause of your problem? How do we even treat widows in our family? Don't we tell them that when your husband was alive, what did he do for me? That's who we are as a people. And we can always change it. Because this is a learned behavior. We've learned due to cultural and societal antecedents, and we can start to learn anew. Because when we learn anew, we can also have a society where people, young men, rather than beating widows, will see widows and carry them and say, Mama, let me help you. Because you're a widow, you lost your husband, you're going through pain. So we can truly build a society of kindness when we are ready to unlearn this gift.
Now, I think at this point, well said, Rufai, because this thing is something that has to do with the current culture that we now have. Partly, the Christianity, also the faith, is also to be blamed here. That you see a lot of when you have this narrative of casting and binding, you cast, you bind, and you take away this, you do that, you do the other one. And in that casting and binding, that widows are now becoming endangered species, that our aged mothers and fathers, because it doesn't stop there. We have the same madness happening in our various villages, that you see a woman of 80 years, 75 years, vulnerable, walking slowly. Someone would be in Lagos, and one idiotic pastor will say, it is that your grandma, it is that your mom in the village that is aching, doing whatever she or he can do to survive. That is that individual that is behind why you're not successful. In 21st century, have told us on this platform stories of acquaintances, people close to me, how these things, basically happen. And sometimes that when people like myself, when you speak up, I don't care. I do speak up and I must keep speaking up. And hence I'm speaking up now because this thing must stop. That when these things happen and people tell you, oh yeah, he no longer has faith. He don't die. Yeah. No, it's just that your level of ignorance has sewn agbada and wore a red cap on top of it. Because that is what it is. How can he in the first place? How can, there was a time, there was this video, people say, oh, that one mama, they went to meeting in the coven. On their way back, she fell from the electric wire. Are you people idiots? How can you just capture someone in a woman filled with gray hair, sitting on the floor, 84 years old, mentally no longer stable because she has at that point been dehydrated, rather than offer her succor, trying to find out how you get people to help. People are there shouting, oh, she fell from this and she's coming from a meeting. Eventually, when her children comes, it turns out that the woman is actually suffering from dementia. Hence, the reason she wasn't able at that point, in the case of that video in Lagos, to be able to, or to be in a position to give her proper details and address. Because when someone is suffering from dementia, when someone has Alzheimer, your recollection is no longer the same. Sometimes people do not even know they see you. I've worked in an environment where someone came in. The mother couldn't recognize the son. You tell them, Mama, this is Andrew. He says, okay. 2 seconds later, he's forgotten about what the son said. You repeat it again. Ah, how are you? She's forgotten again. But in our place, somebody very stupidly and idiotic will tell you, oh, that is as a result of all the sins, all the people she's killed. What they say, this person is confessing. These are things sometimes, honestly, we need to begin to bring logic. We need to bring logic to our senses. Someone who has got dementia could actually be talking things out of point. Someone could tell you now, oh, I killed Obama. Yes, Obama is still alive. Yes, Obama is not in Nigeria. In 2 million years, she will not have anything to do with Obama. In the same way, she can just say, oh, I killed my husband, or I killed the other person. And everybody will just run, oh, she is confessing, she is doing the other one. No one actually takes into account the mental state of the individual in question. That does not mean in no way, shape, or form that evil does not exist. But my point is that the way we profile and do and engage in these things are not healthy, and they are not right on basically. They're not right. They're not right. Because at the end of the day, I think that it is mostly in the current situation, the neo Pentecostalism is, in my estimation, the key driver in this madness. Of course, over 100 years ago, or even less than 100 years ago, there were times that even in England, that they believed in witches. People developed. And here we are now, people, we must also develop beyond these beliefs. Beyond these beliefs, we must also develop. On that note, that is it with this, but I lend my voice in saying that to the wife of the Abia state government or governor, to say that she has done noble by intervening in this case, and at the same time that more should be done, that those who took part in that public humiliation should be brought to book. Until we begin to do this with continuous education, relearning, and re-educating ourselves, and not certain people, but ourselves collectively. And until we begin to push for empiricism, that anything, most of the things we have to do as a society has to be backed up by empirical evidence, not just on some sort of hypotheses that are, anchored on nothing in the realm of reality. That's why if you know anything about physics or chemistry, you may hate it, you may like it, but if you put 1 + 1, it turns out a certain number. No matter how you dice it, no matter how you place it, the result will be same. We must, if we have to take our rightful place in the 21st century, we must begin to also employ our senses and get into where others have been and where others, what made others to actually get to that point where they are today.